I'm Nick Baldridge from the For Amusement Only EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast. What's that sound? It's Greg and George from the SNES Podcast.
$200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. You're listening to the SNES podcast with your hosts, Soulblazer and George.
Hello everybody, welcome to Super NES Podcast, episode number 82 coming at you this time. Wow, we're getting up there. Kind of lose track sometimes, it's like how long we've been doing something, but yeah, it's been a while. I'm Greg, joined as always by George.
Hi.
Hello. And we are doing another listener suggested episode for you in this podcast because we kind of felt bad over the fact that we kind of bashed the game that the first game that this guy suggested. So we want to try to cover something that we hopefully can say a few more positive things about this time around.
Was it bashing or was it being honest?
Well, well, it was probably a little bit of both. Yeah, I'd probably like to say like some of both. But yeah, anyway, so Andrew Coed suggested that we look at the episode, Super NES Podcast and Doom in our last episode, and another game that he suggested that he had a much more positive opinion about was the port of an obscure arcade game by Capcom called King of Dragons. And this is another one of those titles that kind of is easy to forget about. Especially in my case, I kept getting this game confused with King Dragon Pass, which is a very good PC-based simulation game that's like totally underrated. So not a very memorable name, but hey, like it is what it is. So this is the first time George and I played this game, and even though even though this game came out in the arcades during the time period when I was hanging out in arcades quite a bit, it dates back to 1991. I totally missed this game. It just apparently was not a very popular or distributed game, even though this game came out during a time in which hack and slash games were very, very popular. During the early 90s, there were two genres that really were exploding like in the arcades. There was this genre, and there's also the fighting game, which Capcom, by the way, was a leader like in both of those. So it's like, I knew nothing about this game, but it certainly reminds me like about a bunch of other games, which we'll get into here like a little bit. So this game took a few years to come on the Super NES. It got released in Japan in March 1994, and then North America in April. That's the next month. Never got a power release, as far as I can tell. And this game only came out on the Super NES. That's the only home port of it. Home port available of it. The arcade version of the game has been included in a couple of Capcom's collections recently. That's available in both the Capcom Classics Collection Volume Number 2, for the PlayStation, and for the PS2 and Xbox. It's also on the Capcom's Classic Collection Reloaded for the PSP. So just the fact this is the only home port of the game, it just just more proof that this game is not super popular. Kind of surprised that you've got a Super NES port, to be honest with you, but that version of the game is not very common either, which we'll talk about here toward the end, like we get into pricing. But anyway, I'm a pretty big fan of hack and slash games. Some people kind of, defensively call them like, fight and go right games, but because that's all essentially doing. But I suppose it's because I grew up in arcade during the time period when this kind of game was like very, very popular. You had the TMNT games by Konami. You had also by Capcom the Dungeons and Dragons games. You had you played Golden Axe franchise from a from Sega. All played the Knights of the Round, which we looked at way back when in episode 2 of this podcast. They're all like pretty similar games, and Knight and King of Dragons is like no exception. Maybe that's why maybe it's one reason the game really didn't stand out like all that well.
I think you mean more of a beat 'em up than a hack and slash.
Well, you're kind of doing elements of both. I was going to say there are some elements like with the beat 'em up genre, like in here present too. So, how do you feel about games like this, like ilk, George? Because I don't think we've covered one of these yet on the podcast, like where you've been like on here with me.
I'm trying to think, and I think you might be right, but I like these games. I like beat 'em ups and hack and slashes. I wouldn't call it a hack and slash, honestly. It's more of a beat 'em up.
Well, yeah. I mean, you are doing a lot of button mashing, but there's some Are
you saying beat 'em ups are only button mashers?
Well, beat 'em ups require kind of like more strategic button pushing, I think. Whereas whereas for me at least, hack and slash is just like like the Quarter Muncher. The game design sucks as much money out of you as possible, like in the arcades. Where it is possible to be able to beat the game on just a few credits, like becoming really good at it.
I don't know. But
yeah, it's a fine line. You and I could probably debate that. Like the cow to come home, but the point stands. I think we're both right. Have you played? You've obviously. I say obviously. I'm assuming. I'm assuming you played at least the Turtles games, like in Konami, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Have you played other games from Capcom, like this type, like for example, like Dungeons and Dragons games, or or Magic Sword, or like Knights of the Round?
Nothing's coming to mind right now, but I might have played one of them.
This game is pretty typical for games like this type, like we were saying before. There's 16 levels in the game, which sounds like a lot, but some of these stages are very, very short.
Very short.
Yes. So the length of this, the length of stages varies wildly, which kind of is surprising. But all in all, this game's average playing time is right about par for games of this type. You can go through the whole game in like 45-60 minutes.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. So
it's definitely one of those games where you want to bring in a friend.
Oh yeah, I mean so we'll talk about this later on, but all in all, I think this game, because I have to play this game in MAME first to get a hang on it before I play the Super NES version. This game's a very, very good port from the arcade game, but one of the differences they had to make, of course, was that the arcade game allowed for play a lot of 4 people simultaneously.
4 people? I read 3. Did I read wrong, or was wherever I read, was that wrong? Because I read 3.
Yeah, one of us is obviously wrong here. Let me look.
Well, that's for sure. But I could have sworn I saw that it was 3.
Let me look at let me look like the arcade version real quick. Let's see. You're correct. I'm sorry. I assumed it was 4 because most games this type do allow 4. Nope. 3.
You were just making sure I was paying attention. It's all right.
Yeah, so okay. So yeah, the Super NES version only supports 2 players because for some reason they never released a multi-tap like the system, whereas the NES had the Genesis had one. So.
Honestly, I couldn't think of a time where I ever had more than one other person with me to play an SNES game. So.
I remember playing Mew on the NES, like the 4 people, because something like whatever, like a multi-tap. But I played Game Boy games in the past. In the past, 2 other 4 people are connected. But
see, that was a very rare thing for me too. I never really connected more than 2 people.
Yeah. Well, yeah. There's not really very many. Yeah, there's really not that many games that support like 3 or 4 people.
Yeah, that's true too.
But, especially when it comes to like home versions. But plus also the fact that Super NES, as powerful as Super NES was, and the Super NES did get some very very good arcade ports. The hardware was still limited. And not as powerful like the arcade hardware, so I think I think 2 people was probably the max the system could probably handle anyway. So, but title screen, you're able to support 1 or 2 people, as we were just talking about. You can also select the controls, so you can flexing remap the buttons, which is very nice. Controls are pretty standard for like the game this type. You have 1 button to attack, 1 button to jump, and 1 button for your special attack. You can also set your shield settings. You can have the shield either come on automatically or block. You can have it turned off altogether, or you can set the shield to, or you can set the shield to the 4th button. Where like you push the button down, the shield come up to block. So that's a nice touch.
That's probably a good idea to actually turn on for manual control, because when I played, I almost never seen the shield used.
Yeah, automatically, it doesn't seem to be used very much.
Yeah.
Whereas you use it manually, it's another button, so it kind of adds that's another layer of complexity that maybe some people don't want to deal with. But having it, if you're gonna player having that shield set to you set before the button does kind of help some gameplay features to it. So, to pick 1 of 5 characters at the start of the game, you have your typical fantasy classes. You have the fighter, the cleric, the wizard. And, of course, I'm drawing drawing blank like like in the other 2, but
wasn't there a thief or a hunter or whatever?
Yeah, there's the thief, the elf, like the dwarf. The classes. They do play a little bit differently. So there are some like differences between the classes. Not major differences, but there are some differences between them. So, for example, like one class is better at magic, another class is better at like defense, another class is better with attack, etc., etc. So, the fighter just suggested be a suggested class because he's like a good balance, like our own character. When you're just like starting out.
Yeah.
So I usually play as the fighter.
You played as the fighter? I almost said flighter.
Fighter. Yeah.
You fly around. Cool. You get some wings. That'd be cheating. Yeah, no, I played as the cleric in this one.
Okay, cool. Yeah. No, yeah, the cleric's mace has some like pretty good range to it.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's a bit slow. It's slower compared to the sword.
Yeah, but he's more on the defensive. Yeah, that too.
So to go through the game, there are power-ups that you can get in the game. One of them, for example, like actually the bomb is a bomb that kills all enemies like on the screen for you. There are some power-ups, and this is a feature I really like that are like traps that you don't want to pick up because one, for example, freeze you in ice for 5 seconds. So,
at least you can do a neat little dance while you're stuck in the ice.
Yeah, that's true. So don't blindly willy-nilly go picking everything up in the game, because sometimes power-ups, the power-ups may be like bad for you.
That's what I did.
Yeah, but
it was a bad time.
There's a health gauge on the screen. There are some food items that appear every now and then to give you some health back. You do go invincible for a few seconds, or a few seconds after you get hit, which is very nice. There's some games like this that don't do that. That can be very aggravating to play, but at
also
least
very difficult.
Yes.
Yeah. I have a question about the health, though.
Sure.
Because the health bar has like different colors, and
Yep.
I never really understood what that was on the character. I mean, I know there's a gradient for like boss health, but when you're playing, like I've seen my health like partly yellow and red and this and that.
I think the gradient for the player just kind of reflects the gradient of just like the same kind of gradient that the boss uses. It just kind of reflects that. Green is healthy, yellow is like yellow is like you're slightly wounded, red's like you're badly hurt. It's just there for flair. It doesn't really do anything. You can also get so George mentioned, every stage has a boss fight. And some of these bosses are a lot harder than the bosses. The difficulty of these bosses is not even at all, which is kind of a weak point to the game, I'd argue, because rather than ramping up a difficulty for you as it goes on, I think some bosses early on are like very, very difficult. For example, boss stage 2, the one-eyed golem creature. He's tough. He's a really difficult boss. A little bit unfair to throw to stage 2, I think.
Maybe.
And it's a little intimidating when he comes on the screen with like 7 bars of health.
Sometimes people find things difficult, or I find them easy, and then I find easy stuff difficult. So I don't know. It's hard to gauge right now.
Well, all the bosses do have patterns to them. Patterns to them, like, at least. So it's like once you learn them, like we were saying before, this game is possible to be able to go through like one credit once you get good enough at it. Difficulty for this game, I thought, was like pretty difficult. Not the hardest game of this type, I think, to go through, but definitely. It
definitely has some difficulty to it, but it's not, like you said, it's not the hardest game out there.
No, I mean, enemies on the screen, there's about 4 enemies on the screen at max, I think I saw.
I think that's right.
Another one changes they made in Poison's game to the Super NES. They reduced the number of enemies on screen at once. Because again, they didn't want to have to slow down or lag affecting the game as you went through it.
Well, that's a shame because I've seen slowdown playing this game.
There's a little bit of it, but it could be like.
Oh yeah, no, it's not. It's nothing egregious. It's just it's once in a while you'll see it and then it's like, there's a slowdown. Oh, okay, now it's gone.
Yeah, they're trying to port a popular, powerful arcade game on the Super NES, so there's going to be some of that. But most enemies you have to attack them 2 or 3 times to be able to kill them for sure. Unlike bosses, there's no health gauge for those, so you really don't know how much damage they've taken. So that's draws a downside to the game, but to be fair, the arcade version of the game didn't have that either, so.
Yeah.
But, and one nice feature about this game is that after you beat the boss, that you get a power-up. You either get, the next level of your armor, or the next level of your weapon, the next level of your shield. So, and the game would tell you as you're going through at the bottom of the screen, your health meter, what level you are for your each of those 3 things.
Sometimes they're also randomly in chests.
That's true too. Yes. Yep. So, and there's gold too. The most common item in the game is gold, which is good for points, which is good for giving you extra lives.
Right.
There's a timer in this game, like most arcade games, but the timer's pretty generous. I never had a problem with the timer. The timer in the game is pretty generous. You never had a problem with it. So, it's just there to keep you moving. So.
Yeah. How about the leveling up stuff? You passively level up by attacking enemies.
Yeah,
not defeating them, actually attacking them.
Right, which is kind of strange. I can't think of a game that actually does anything like that.
I can think of a modern game that does that.
Oh, like which one?
Castle Crashers.
Oh yeah, that's true too. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
The living mechanic in the game is it's not perfectly implemented, but it's certainly something very unique to this game. I think it's certainly it's certainly one of the more interesting ideas like the game.
I don't know how difficult it would be for a second player because, what if they don't get enough hits in and they're kind of underpowered then?
Well, most of the time when I'm playing a game like this with somebody else, we usually agree to okay, I take this out of the screen, play that outside the screen because enemies often come at you from both sides.
Whenever I play with somebody, it usually just turns into a free-for-all.
Well, a little bit of strategy goes a long way to help, but...
Oh yeah, no, strategy always helps.
But
it's also more fun to just have anarchy.
True, but you can't hurt each other at least, thank God for that
much. Oh, yeah,
but...
no, that's terrible when you play some kind of beat 'em up and you're able to hurt each other. It's like, what's the point then?
Yeah, Double Dragon for the NES, had that option, they wanted to have it on.
Which one?
A Double Dragon for the NES, you have it set it to where you could hurt each other or you couldn't hurt each other.
Which Double Dragon?
The original.
No, the first one you cannot play simultaneous multiplayer.
Well, I mean, there is the. I'm talking about the limited 2-player option the game has, where just doing the challenge thingy. I'm not sure what to call it.
The one-on-one fights?
Yes.
Well, of course you have to hit each other. That's the point.
Oh, you know what? I'm thinking about oh yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. My bad.
It might have been Double Dragon 3.
2.
Are you sure it was 2? I know 2 and 3 had simultaneous, but
right. I know 2 had that option.
Okay. It was one 3. Of them. It was either 2 or 3.
Yeah.
I don't remember which one.
Yeah, I've not played 3 nearly as much as I have as 2, because 2 I really like and 3 I don't. So.
I think a lot of people will agree with you.
But I mean, having 2 on the NES Mini as opposed to 1, I think was a better call there because I think 2's the best. 2's the best game in the trilogy. But
yes, I think I would agree with that.
But anyway, yeah. So the leveling system in this game is pretty unique. So once I discovered that, that was a joy. So I think this game definitely has a couple of things going for it, and leveling system's one of them for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But let's talk graphics. Graphically, this game is very similar looking to the it's very similar looking like the arcade version of the game.
They're just scaled down a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
Yes. So, but it still looks pretty good.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think the art style in this game is gorgeous.
Yeah.
The stages all look very different. We didn't talk about this. There's a short little map screen that kind of shows you the beginning of each stage. It's just pretty much eye candy. To give you the idea that you're progressing through the kingdom. But yeah. Good use of color, scrolling effects in the background are very well done. The graphics almost look like art, watercolor in some places, I think.
I took a look at the arcade version. I've seen a few pictures, and it definitely it doesn't look just like the arcade version, but it definitely stands up to the comparison.
Yeah, it's very close.
Yes.
I think
well done.
I think as far as arcade Super NES ports, this is one of the best ones out there as far as graphically speaking. As far as
maybe
as far as the translation goes over. The enemies, your characters, the enemy characters are I'd say medium size. They're not small, but they're not small, but they're not huge. I think the size is fine for them. So, they look detailed. They look like the character that you're playing as. The fighter looks like a fighter. The cleric definitely looks like a cleric, etc. The boss sprites are very good looking.
Oh yeah, well they're bigger, so they have a little more room for detail.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, they do definitely look great.
So, graphically this game really shows off. And then because 94 is the was like the mid-level life for the Super NES. So it's like this time period, you see more and more games that really were able to push the graphical hardware of the system quite a bit. And Capcom definitely had some experience with the system by this point. So, the music in this game was done by Yoko Shimura, who we talked about before earlier. She was one of the more famous, musical designers for Capcom. Like other companies. It's a good soundtrack. I mean, it's not earwormy, but it definitely but it fits the theme of the game very, very well, I think.
Yes, it's very nice. Like you said, it doesn't super stand out. You're not going to be humming it or anything. But for
the game itself, it's a good soundtrack.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a nice listen.
The music also seems to match stages pretty well, I thought too.
Yes.
The sound effects of the game are pretty typical, except they, for some reason, Capcom decided it was a good idea to borrow the victory cry from the victory cry like in the Dungeons & Dragons arcade games. Boy, I hate that. That is so aggravating because every time your character starts a stage or wins a major fight, he raises a weapon in the air and it does sound. That sounds so freaking stupid.
Also does it when you level up.
Yeah, it's true too. God, I hate that.
I think it's alright.
And that sounds directly ripped from the D&D games. I don't know why it's here, but I hate that. Definitely one of the few knocks I'm going to give this game. So, but I forgot to mention this before earlier. Of the shield. One of the differences vis-a-vis the classes. Only the fighter, cleric, and dwarf can use their shield.
Makes sense.
So, the other two characters don't have it. Also, I don't know if we mentioned the default magic attack that damages that kills enemies on the screen is both buttons. Typical of fighting games, but you can, like I said before, the options screen you could set that to be a single button if you want to. So. That's what I usually did. So talk about the classes. The classes just a bit because we didn't mention this earlier. Fighters are very good at the fighters are very good at physical attacks and defense. Lacks magical ability. The dwarf's able to dodge and block attacks. Has decent physical attack, but little magic attack. The elf has good agility and great range for archery, but is not physically strong. The cleric has great defense, decent magic. During two-player combat, he can actually heal his comrades. And he also has pretty good physical attacks, but his agility is the worst in the game. And the wizard has poor defense, but very good magical attacks and quick but weak physical attacks. So, talking about some of the differences between the arcade and Super NES version, beyond the differences we already mentioned earlier, the sprite size is reduced quite a bit. If you look at the arcade version, the sprites are much bigger like the arcade version compared to the Super NES port. And there's also the other changes we mentioned earlier. Limitation of the number of enemies on screen at once. Graphics turned down a little bit. Some of the stages were also changed around quite a bit too, like the Super NES version of the game.
Really?
Yeah. So, for example, what stage? What stage is that? It's like the arcade version, stage 1, you're driving a ship, it looks like, whereas if a Super NES version of the game, in a plane, it's a plains area of the world. So I'm not sure how those changes are made, but they were. So.
Huh.
But I think it's I think it was just a case where the programmers kind of realized that maybe certain stages were better on the Super NES because of the hardware limitations. If I had to make a guess.
I honestly cannot tell you.
So, but yeah. So how far did you get in this game, George? Were you able to beat it?
No, but I got decently far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I thought you may have kind of a difficult time with this game. So I shared with you a code earlier to give you a bunch of credits. We'll mention that code here in a little bit, but we're both of us are playing this through emulations, of course, or save states, but So I was able to. So Flex, I was able to. So I was able to beat the game after a few tries, using the using up all the gave you credits plus the continues that you earn as you play through the game. So difficulty wise, like I was saying earlier, I thought this game was tough but fair. It wasn't the most difficult hack and slash game I played before in the past. So it definitely shows its arcade roots. So it's still kind of a I can't say quarter muncher because of the because of home port, but I guess credit muncher.
Wait, you tell me you didn't put quarters into your computer?
No, that'd be a bad thing.
I gotta go make some calls.
So overall, this game was fun. I mean, as I went into the game not really knowing what to expect, but it's very typical of Capcom and other companies fighting / hack and slash games this time period. And I'm kind of sad I missed it because because I don't think outside of the leveling system, I don't think this game doesn't really does anything too unique. It reminds me of a whole bunch of other games. It reminds me of something. I see shades of Dungeons and Dragons. I see shades of Knights of the Round. I see shades of Golden Axe here. So it just kind of seems a hybrid, a combination of all the different games that came out during this time period. But it's fun. I mean, anybody enjoys games of this type definitely. Definitely recommend to check it out. The arcade version of the game is, like I said, commonly available either MAME or as part of the Capcom collections. And the arcade version is not really all that difficult to the different Super NES version. It really doesn't matter too much, I think, which version of the game you play. But it was pleasant. It was a pleasant surprise. I was more than happy to. I was more than happy to put in time playing it to be able to get good enough to beat the game. So it's underrated classic, I think. Not the best game of its type, but certainly certainly a very good, unique games and gorgeous graphics. And it's a very unique gameplay elements to it. So what was your overall impression of the game, George?
It's definitely good. It's fun. I mean, it looks great. It plays well. It's a good conversion. It definitely is. I don't see any major flaws in it, but also it's not something that would really stand out way too far. You would definitely have to take a look at the game for it to really make an impression on you, because you can look at it and say, oh, it's another one of those medieval-esque beat-em-up arcade games. Yeah. But it's definitely worth a try, and it's not too difficult. I don't know what it's like to play with somebody else, but I'm sure it would definitely add to the fun factor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I said, it's definitely worth a try. I don't know how much it's worth, but if it's worth it, it might be worth it, if that makes sense.
All right. We will talk about that pretty soon here, because this game was uncommon and not really noticed by people in both the arcades and the Super NES version of the game. So because like I said, this is prime time when I was hanging out in arcades and I never saw this game. whereas you remember playing like every other hack and slash game that Capcom came out with. I remember playing both D&Ds, and I remember playing Magic Sword and Knights of the Round in the arcades, but never didn't play the arcades. I never saw this one. So, this game quietly got released, and I couldn't even find reviews of it at the time. Modern opinion of the game rates the game fairly well. Let me see. Let me just look up. Sorry, I should have done this earlier. Let me just try to get kind of a Moby Games kind of sense for what the reviews kind of average out to be on this game.
Yeah, I don't know what they would rate, but I'm sure it's at least something decent. I mean, I don't know what the arcade game was like, but
well, like I said, I played the arcade game first, so I get kind of a comparison to it, and it's very, very close.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about 3.8 to 5 stars seems to be the average rating for it.
Okay, yeah, that's around what it should be.
Right. So, yeah. So anyway, there are two codes like this game that are available to you. One is a very minor code. It's only usable it's only usable if you're playing the game 2 players. The code allows you to be able to play. The code allows you to be able to play the same class like your friends.
Oh.
So both you guys want to play like a fighter, for example. This code allows you to do that. So.
Do you know if that was an arcade thing where they let you play as the same thing, or?
I don't think it was in the arcades.
Okay.
Let me double check. Most arcade machines didn't have codes.
No, I'm not saying codes. Like, did the arcade game allow you to pick the same class?
No. I'm 99% sure that didn't because I can't think of any arcade games where you were able to pick the same class. But the other code in this game is one I mentioned earlier. There's a code in the game that you can use at the title screen to give you 99 credits, which allow anybody to be anybody to finish the game. So glad it's in here. So, I've talked about eBay pricing earlier. This, like I said, this was the only home version of the game that got ported. I'm frankly kind of surprised that Capcom even bothered porting the game to Super NES. But maybe they didn't have. Maybe they wanted to put a game out that year because they didn't have enough games in the pipeline. They're like, oh, we got this 3-year arcade game that we can port over. Maybe there was enough. There is a small but dedicated fan base to this game out there. I did see that online, so I guess maybe there's some demand for the game, but it did not get a very big run. It looks like because this game is one of the more pricier games on eBay for sure. Outside of the typical Nintendo first party and RPG types that tend to command the highest prices. There are copies out there. It's not commonly available. But the game is out there if you want to get it. There's 11 copies of the game currently listed right now. 19 copies recently sold. Card pricing is typical for Super NES game varies wildly depending upon when the game was was sold and how patient you're going to be. George, I will let's play a small game here. Do you want to take a stab at the ballpark figure, what the card goes for, on eBay?
$20.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, go higher.
$40.
$40 is the minimum. I saw this. I saw this be so at $40 to $93.
$93.
Yes.
Oh my.
CIB copies, few and far between, and they go for huge prices because of that. I saw one box and card copy of this game go for $75, and there's one complete copy of the game, which it's kind of rare for a CIB copy to pop up. Sold for a whopping $225.
You're killing me.
Yeah, so because of the high price of this game, this is also a game that I saw on eBay, and I've not seen this happen for a long time with a game that we covered here on the podcast for at least like North American release games. There's some reproductions of the game, reproduction of the game of the game I also sold recently on eBay for cheaper prices,
like $20.
$20, $30, yes.
Okay. Because I'd say this game was maybe like $30 maximum.
Yeah. So, we can camp out on this topic on this topic like a few minutes for like a few minutes, George. I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this. And before, like I say, we've not, this is the first time. This is the first time I've seen a North American release. The first time I've seen a game we cover in the podcast since Chrono Trigger that actually had reproductions like being sold side by side, like along with the actual official cards. As before in the past, I'm not a collector. I do own a game plane, including the game plane for all the classic systems, including this one, via emulation. George is a bit of a collector. I'm not sure if you call yourself a collector, George, but
I definitely collect.
Okay, there's some systems you definitely have your pretty good libraries for. What would you say your biggest libraries are? Like PS1, PS2, and Master System?
PS2, I have a decent amount of Master System stuff, so yeah, I think I have more Master System stuff than like NES or SNES.
Right.
Yeah.
So reproductions are a very controversial topic for several reasons. I know some people who go so far as let's say that, an opinion on them varies wildly depending on who you talk to. I know some folks, at least some very prominent eBayers. eBayers, yeah, be like eBay on the mind, YouTubers, who go so far, like I said, who goes so far as saying that they're fakes and they shouldn't be allowed, period. Whereas you have other people who are like, well, there's no harm in it. It doesn't really hurt anybody. I'm kind of in the middle of the road when it comes. I have no problem. I have no problem with the reproduction as long as it's clearly marked as being a reproduction. And this is where I have an issue with this game about, because the reproductions I was seeing sold on eBay, they're often one or two sellers, and they're always the same type. The cards look very, very good. They're really indistinguishable like the real thing, and that's the issue because the label on the front is perfect. It's a perfect match for what the actual retail copy of the game went. The only way you could tell that it was repro was that how the back of Super NES cards and NES and this NES Sega Master System and other systems did this also. There's a warning label on the back of the card, just saying warning, don't expose this card to high temperatures. Don't expose this card to electric shock, etc., like that. It's like the label I'm talking about, George.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like also you might be able to tell how the plastic is on the cartridge.
That's true too.
Because you can't. There's no way you can make it perfect, a perfect reproduction of what it was back then.
Yeah, I know what the card physically feels like. I just know looking at the pictures. There's no difference in the pictures.
Yeah, that's the problem. A lot of the times it's you're looking at pictures and that's not the best.
So, in this case, the seller, not only was the seller being honest and saying in the title that was reproduction, but the card was also missing that back label I was talking about. The back of the card's was plain. So you could tell that it was a reproduction by looking at the pictures, but if the seller doesn't show the back of the cards and you see the front, you have no way of knowing that.
I think that's the biggest problem. I don't think reproductions are a problem. I think the problem is that some people like to be a little scummy with things.
Exactly.
And they will definitely sell a reproduction as original or something. And I know there's a big problem with things like Game Boy Advance games, particularly the Pokemon games. That's why a lot of people ask to look at the motherboard, because you can tell which is a knockoff and which one isn't, because of what's printed on the board and the year and the logo and this and that. I know a little bit about that, but I'm no expert. But there is a good amount of ways you can tell what's a fake or not.
Right. So yeah, these cards. these cards I'm perfectly okay with. Somebody making reproduction because like I said, this card is like very, somewhat rare and like pretty expensive. But the label should have some kind of indication on it somewhere. Like in my mind, at least, that's a reproduction. It shouldn't say somewhere like reproduction or like copyright 2017 or something like that. Because not only is the fact that the seller could also be scummy. But another problem that happens on a regular basis, the person who has the card may have to, the card. What happens to that card? What happens to that card when it gets back in the market, like one reason or another?
Right. How are you supposed to know if it's a repro or not? Then
exactly. Yes.
That's
buyer,
another thing too. Like, what if the buyer doesn't know and they think it's an original?
Right.
Then people are starting to think that the seller is scummy. When they're not, nothing is black and white with this. Nothing.
True.
Honestly, nothing's black and white, and that's the biggest problem. Is that people like to think that everything is, but it's just like you don't know the situation, so don't jump to conclusions. But also, like, just try to be mindful of things. That seller could be scummy. They could not be scummy. Sometimes sellers don't know what they're selling, which is sad. But it's a big mess, and
right.
I honestly, I guess maybe they should mark if something's a repro, or maybe like have something in the plastic molding that has some kind of sign to tell that it's a repro.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to give another example, you probably heard about this, George. Capcom last week announced they're doing like a special reproduction, limited run of Street Fighter 2 cards.
Oh yeah.
And those cards, those cards are easy to tell that they're, that they're like reproductions, because being like made like in molds and colors that don't match the original Super NES cards.
Right.
So no problem with those. You know what that is, but I think the buyer should be a little bit responsible too in some cases. I think also because the buyer, if you're going to spend a lot of money on a rare game, you should know what you're buying. I mean, having a buyer come in there and just wanting a collection and pulling you down money for something without doing the research is stupid. I think, but I think the responsibility, like with buyers, buyer and seller's parts. The seller should try to represent what they have to the best of their knowledge and ability, but the buyer should do some research also, like what they're buying.
Right.
So anyway, so I'm okay with reproductions of this game being sold because, like I said, this game is somewhat expensive. Expensive. Some people out there just want to play the game, but these cards. At least in this case, I'm not happy with these cards because these cards really don't have an indication, except for that missing back label that they're reproduction. Because at least, like you were saying, George, physically maybe the card feels a bit different, or whatnot, but at least as far as the pictures go, as far as the label goes, the label's perfect. If the seller wasn't saying it, in the auction that was reproduction, and you didn't know about the back label, the issue, but you have no idea. So, and so the reproductions sold for I think is a fair price. Repros should sell for cheaper prices, but I've seen numerous times where somebody's paid high money, at average or above market value for a cart, and then realized later on that was a fake, and that's a big issue.
That's a shame.
Yeah. So and unfortunately, it's going to keep happening. Under this bubble, under the Super NES bubble that we're in, right now, bursts, and some of the prices, some of the prices that come down to earth, demand's going to be out there. So, I'm almost surprised to see this card actually, to see this game actually had repros, because it's this is not. You expect repros for Japanese only games, or for or role playing games, very expensive or very rare, but for a fighting game, it's that was kind of strange. But it just goes to show just how uncommon this game is, I suppose.
Yeah, I find it weird that they're making repros for something that actually came over here.
But they wouldn't be making repos if there wasn't money in it. So there must be some money in it.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much it costs to be able to get a card shell. I'm assuming you could buy from a company online an actual Super NES cards.
Well, they might be 3D printed.
True. Yeah. So, yeah, or they might be like Super Mario World cards that have been repurposed.
I don't want to think about that.
So
I don't want to think about that, Greg.
Why is that?
We're getting into some mean territory here.
Yeah, well,
I don't like the idea of destroying games just to, use the shell. If you were repurposing like old Madden PS2 games, sure, break those discs because who's gonna play the old Maddens?
Well,
no, that's kind of a joke too, but like, don't destroy a game just to use the shell or whatever.
That's pretty common for some systems, like
I know.
cards,
for
example.
Oh yeah.
That's, because Twiz kind of kind of a unique situation because those cards, especially for games like Combat and Pac-Man, they overproduced in such huge numbers that that there's really no harm, I think, in just taking a few thousand of those cards, like repurposing them, because it's like they're still finding in warehouses like new unsold stock of 2,600 games.
Yeah, but how about the was it Ball Blazer, the 7800 game?
Oh, the Pokey chip.
Yeah, taking out the Pokey chip. Like,
that's
oh
a big
man,
one. Yeah,
that's ridiculous. I mean, I understand, like, you can't manufacture one easily, sure, but
right.
you're not killing games, but you're ruining them. Like, you can still play it, but there's no sound now.
I've heard reports that Ball Blazer's unplayable with the Pokey chips taken out.
Oh,
so
really?
I think in that case, because,
so you are destroying the game.
Yeah, the 7800.
That's so.
The 7800 only had 2 games released for that Pokey chips,
right.
like on board, Commando and Ball Blazer.
Right.
And Pokey chips were also used for Pokey chips were also used in our Atari arcade games and Atari computers like that time period. So it's like people were also taking the Pokeys out, to save them. To use it for those systems as well, and not just other games. But I know Atari Age has mentioned that there is a project in the works. We're trying make a chip that will be the equivalent of Pokey instead of used for homebrews.
Oh, that'd be really cool, because I just like you're tearing this apart, and it's like, oh, come on.
Yeah, that's a real shame. So it's like, yeah. So just so yeah, buyer beware when it comes like games out there. Like, don't assume this game I think is a perfect example. This game you would not assume would have have reproductions out there for it. Just be careful. Even like a somewhat common game, it might be but you don't know what it is. So it's like do a little bit of research on it. In this case, I will at least give the seller credit for saying clearly in the auction that's reproduction, which is why which also begs the question. I'm surprised eBay didn't flag and take it down, because you're not supposed to do that. But anyway. But then they don't make money. Well, yeah, eBay is more than happy to turn the other cheek to suits their purposes, but in this case, the biggest issue I had was the fact that the label didn't really have anything on saying it was a repro. My fear is what happens 5-10 years when that card ends up back in the market for one reason or another, and maybe the person who sells it doesn't know that. So it hurts the market. And it hurts everybody, unfortunately.
Do you ever think they're going to be PlayStation repros?
There are in some cases. I mean,
there are.
Yeah, I definitely played repros of CD based systems, games.
I never heard of that before.
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Rare game valuable that I wanted valuable game that I wanted to play. Snatcher, like the Sega CD. I really wanted to play that game when I had a Sega CD, but but even 15 years ago, physical copies of the game were hugely expensive because like the game is very, very popular. So like a friend of mine said, I have the game. I'll just like burn you a copy because being an early CD-based system, there was no copy protections on it. So he just sent me. So we just burned a copy of the game on his CDR. Sent me the game. It played fine.
Well, that's kind of different. That's more of like a piracy type of thing than like reproduction.
But when I sold the Sega CD later on, I did not include that disc. The disc with it, just like destroyed it. Because the only thing I wanted to do was play the game. I played the game, so it was done.
That is a good game, though.
Yeah, it is. It's a great game.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
really a shame. It's a shame I had to resort to that because if the game had been like released for PlayStation or something else, I wouldn't have it to get it that way.
And now you can emulate it.
Yeah. Yes. Now you can. So, yeah. So I mean. I have seen certain PlayStation games, like CDRs of them like floating around, or like very, very close copies to it. So, because there are some like expensive PlayStation games like out there. So.
Yep.
So. But anyway, yeah. So, this is like I'm saying, this is the first time since since Chrono Trigger that a game we covered in the podcast I've seen reproductions for, and that was kind of just like that was like eyebrow raising. So, yeah. I mean, so yeah. If you just want to play the game, $20 I think is a fair price for it. Understand that you're getting like a repro. I'm not sure a collector. As good as this game is, I don't know if $40 is worth it. Like I said, the arcade version of the game is pretty commonly available in this like Capcom collection, so you can also so you can get the game that way if you want to, and it plays really the same. Because like I said, this is like a very, very good port of the Super NES. You're really not really missing anything by playing the arcade version versus the Super NES version of the game. So
you can't play 3 people though.
Well, that's not a problem. That's not a problem if you don't have anybody to play with.
That's not a problem. It's a solution.
I suppose.
No, I want to play this game by myself.
But how are the PlayStation, the PS2 didn't have a multi-tap available to it, did it?
Yeah, there were like 2 different. I know there's one official one, and I think there was 1 or 2 others that were unofficial.
No, I didn't
but
realize
yes,
that.
there is definitely a multi-tap. There's a multi-tap for the PlayStation, there's a multi-tap for the PlayStation 2.
Okay.
And actually, I think there...
Yeah, it probably is.
Why would there be a multi-tap? There's 4 ports.
Oh, is there 4 ports? Okay, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah. What's interesting is there's a multi-tap for the PS2 where... you can only use it for the fat PS2, which is interesting. I think it might be because of how the PS2 is constructed and it won't fit the slim.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, there are multi-taps out there.
Yeah. Okay. So I imagine that the 3-player mode for the three-player mode that the arcade version offers just fine then, like at the collection.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we can check that out at some point.
The PSP version probably supports network play, so that's probably how they do the multiplayer.
I don't know. I think you're giving them too much credit for that. That's a decent amount of work.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I've never played it, so I can't tell you, but, I do know some... I do remember playing like one PSP game, like the network. So, but
oh yeah, there's a lot of PSP games that do network stuff, but
yeah. So I don't know, but anyway, yeah, $40 I think is kind of like overpriced like for the game, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but $20.
I think like 30 would be my maximum for this.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so this game plays just fine in emulation though. Thank God for that much. So,
yes.
So, yeah, definitely underrated game. Definitely fun. Like I said, I'm a big fan of games of this type. So it's like definitely like a blast to play. And thank you again to Andrew. Andrew liked the game suggestion because this was a lot more fun to talk about than the last game, so that's for sure.
What was the last game? I totally forget what it was.
Doom, unfortunately.
I was kidding.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. I was just like covering my bases.
Okay.
Next time on the podcast, we're covering a doozy. We're covering a classic.
Doom 2.
that would have been horrible.
That would be a doozy.
But it's like, whew, some of the home ports of Doom 2 are not even that good.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, what game are we covering next time, George?
Earthbound.
Yes, one of the tried and true, like much beloved classics for the Super NES. Another game where reproductions are very, very common for it.
But
even though
on the upside, you can actually pay Nintendo to get it digitally on your console machine.
It's a couple of years ago. For a long time, Nintendo was saying they couldn't release the game digitally because they couldn't get all the rights issues sorted out. But they finally got around that, releasing digitally a couple of years ago. So just thank God for that.
Right there on the Wii U. I don't know if it's on anything else.
I think it is. I'll have to confirm that. This is a game also this is a game that does have some problems playing like an emulation. So we'll talk about that. Yes.
Now I want to know. You can tell me later.
Yeah, but just real quick, just to mention it. Depending upon the version of the game, there's the game's watchdog can detect early versions of the games, and makes the game like much more difficult by putting a lot more enemies show up in the game as like random encounters. And there's also a bug way at the end of the game where a certain version of the game playing through emulation, the game locks up during the final boss and like erases all your save files.
Are you sure that's a bug or is that a feature for pirates?
Well,
I know they had that for the they had that for the NES Earthbound, the NES Mother, because they did port it all those years ago, but they never released it.
True. Yep. Again, that game, early version of that game, had the same issue. But again,
also that game was released too on the Virtual Console, which is crazy.
Yes, it was. Yep. And Mother 3 has been translated by fans. That's
for years it's been.
Yes, that game's out there too. Mm-hmm. So, but very interesting, very weird, quirky franchise. So Earthbound should be a lot of fun to talk about.
Definitely.
But, anyway, as always, thank you for listening. We appreciate your support very much. You can find us on iTunes, and you can also check us out on our Facebook page. You can also you can message on there. So you can also email me directly if you want to at the SNES podcast at yahoo.com. We're always open to game suggestions, ideas, comments, that kind of stuff. We are a proud member of both the Retro Junkie Throwback Network. We can find a whole bunch of other retro-themed podcasts, both gaming and non-game related. Originally also together do the PlayStation Power podcast, where we talk about PS1 and PS2 games.
Yes.
Just warning that podcast is not family friendly. So, but George also does one other game podcast. And what podcast is that, George?
Master System Masterpieces. We cover Master System games.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Pretty interesting games. Said you guys have covered, recently too. But
yep.
But so all right. That's gonna wrap this up, I think. As always, thank you for joining us, George. Very much appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll see you guys again in 2 weeks.
Goodbye.
Take care, all.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man. Now you're playing with power.